Okay, we're live.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Mesner. How are you doing? Are we live?
Yep. Try again.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our workshop of the Board of County Commissioners on Monday. Today we're going to have a presentation from the COGCC, Commissioner Mesner. Mr. John, how are you doing?
Good, Commissioners. Good afternoon. How are you?
Great.
You guys hear me all right?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, good.
Sherry Jane, if you would like to start with this, and then we can get going.
Okay. Commissioner Mesner just wants to do a presentation for the mission changes for the Senate Bill 181.
Okay. You want to go ahead, Commissioner Mesner? The floor is yours.
All right, I appreciate it.
Okay, sorry, real quick, this is Hannah. I'm unable to share my screen, and we've got some slides that he wanted to share. So could you make me a co-host or enable screen sharing, please?
Sure. All right. Just be sure to turn that back over to me when you guys are finished.
Thank you, will do. Just a moment. Need to set this up. All right, we're all up. Take it away, John.
Thanks, Hannah. That's Hannah Hickam, Executive Assistant for the COGCC. And thank you, Commissioners, for having me here this afternoon. What I'm hoping to accomplish, if it's good with you all, is give you a general update on the mission change rulemaking that occurred in the fall, and then an update on some upcoming rulemakings that are happening at the COGCC. So, like I had indicated, my name is John Messner. I'm a member of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. I was appointed to this role as a professional full-time commissioner in July of 2020. I had previously been appointed to the Volunteer Commission in May of 2019. Prior to this role, I was a Gunnison County Commissioner. I owned and managed a horse and hay agricultural operation and owned and operated a custom tack, saddle, and equestrian equipment manufacturing company, and had lived on the western slope for 29 years. During my time as both a planning commissioner and as a county commissioner with Gunnison County, I had the opportunity to craft local oil and gas regulations for Gunnison County, as well as review permits for gas operations as part of the implementation of those regulations. They've been in place for over a decade and were some of the first local regs in the state. This experience in my background is part of the reason that I was appointed to this role on the COGCC. Like I indicated, I'm hoping to share today an overview of the recently completed mission change rulemaking, as well as an update on some of the upcoming rulemakings, and then of course make myself available for any questions you may have. My presentation will be about a half hour, and then any time for questions after that. Next slide, please, Hannah. So, a general overview of SB 19-181, the legislation that was a catalyst for much of the rulemakings that have been undertaken. The legislature sent SB 19-181 to Governor Polis, and he signed it on April 16, 2019. The legislation did a number of things, but in particular, it reconstituted the composition of the commission, once as a new volunteer commission, and then again as a full-time commission. The current composition of the commission includes representation from wildlife, public health, industry, land use, and local government. It created a new mission for the COGCC. It shifted the mission of the commission from fostering oil and gas development with consideration for the protections of public health, safety, and the environment to regulating oil and gas in a manner that protects public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. This is generally referred to as mission change. It also removed consideration of technical feasibility and economic practicability, but did include consideration of what is reasonable and necessary. It created a new local government authority over the surface impacts and siting, which is a dual regulatory authority. It provided the COGCC authority to use off-site compensatory mitigation requirements for the impacts to wildlife, and it directed the COGCC to undertake numerous rulemakings. Next slide, please. To date, we've accomplished a number of rulemakings that we were directed to complete. These include a rulemaking around the 500 series, which is the COGCC hearing process, which was adopted in July of 2019. A hearing around flow lines, which are the pipelines that COGCC regulates, which was adopted in November of 2019. We did a rulemaking around wellbore integrity and groundwater protection, adopted in June 2020. And finally, the mission change rulemaking, which is the change from fostering to regulating, which was adopted in November of 2020. Next slide, please, Hannah. So timing of the mission change rulemaking, August 24th, 2020, the 200 to 600 series, which is 5 of 8 sets of rules focusing on mission change, alternative location analysis, cumulative impacts, and local government provisions was completed. October of 2020, we finished with the 800, 900, and 1200 series, which focused again on mission change and then wildlife. November 23rd, 2020, the final rules were adopted, and on January 15th, 2021, the effective date for the rules began. Since then, there's been extensive outreach, training, and guidance for operators, stakeholders, and staff. There's been a revision and development of a number of different online forums, and now the COGCC is able to receive new permit applications under the new rules. Next slide, please. So the goal of the COGCC is to conduct all of our rulemakings in a manner that increases access, transparency, public participation, engagement, and information regarding oil and gas operations in the state of Colorado. Some examples of this commitment to transparency and public engagement in the mission change rulemaking include taking significant amounts of written and oral public comment and the development of an online portal prior to the hearings to better facilitate that comment. We conducted over 180 hearing hours of discussion and deliberation during the rulemaking hearings. We heard testimony from over 93 parties and 122 witnesses, and all the hearings were conducted virtually due to the ongoing pandemic, which in many ways led to a better hearing process, as folks from around the state had an easier time engaging in the dialogue without having to travel to Denver. What it takes to move the legislative directive and statute into rules includes the initial development of the mission change white paper. After that white paper was daylighted and feedback was received on it, we developed a set of straw dog rules, presented those to the world, took initial public feedback and additional stakeholder feedback, and modified those straw dog rules into draft rules. Again, took additional feedback and modified those draft rules, at which time we began the party pre-hearing statements and the party response statements. And after additional public and stakeholder input in August of 2020, staff presented the final draft set of rules, and we began the formal mission change rulemaking process. Next slide, please. So our goal in the mission change rulemaking was to implement a rulemaking that reflects the spirit and mandates of SB 19181. All of the key issues identified in SB 19-181 were addressed, including the relationship between the commission and local governments, cumulative impacts, alternative location analysis, setbacks, flaring and venting, wildlife protections, and reorganizing, modernizing, and streamlining the rules by updating language and grouping together topics to ensure easier accessibility and better clarity. The significant changes and outcomes from this rulemaking include additional public participation. The new rules create broader access to the COGCC. They also expand standing to allow citizens the ability to participate in hearings, permits, permit applications, and requests from operators for a variance or waiver from a rule. It increased protections for public health, safety, welfare, wildlife, and environmental resources by incentivizing comprehensive landscape level planning through the permitting process rather than one-off well locations. It created a solidified one permit process, the oil and gas development plan, rather than the current multi-step process. It transferred the permitting authority from administrative approvals by the commission staff to the commissioners themselves through a public hearing, which increases transparency and public participation. It established a new regulatory relationship with local governments, which includes COGCC involvement early on in local permitting and siting processes, should the local government be interested in that, and includes recognition that operators must comply with the most protective regulations. It ensures environmental justice for disproportionately impacted communities and allows them to be involved in the permit process. It created a first-of-kind cumulative impacts data gathering system with an annual reporting requirement to the public for transparency. It established protected setbacks for oil and gas development from residential buildings, schools, and high-priority habitat, including riparian areas. It ended routine flaring and venting, and increased protections for wildlife management and wildlife resources, water resources. Next slide, please, Hannah. So this is a general overview of the different series that were addressed in the rulemaking. And in the next few slides, I'll go into detail in each of these series. Next slide, please. The 200 series are our general rules. The rulemaking addressed transfer of permits. We adopted new regulation governing the transfer of permits to ensure that the COGCC has all the information it needs to effectively regulate facilities that are transferred between operators. It addressed due process and improved due process for operators, and takes advantage of the new full-time commission by allowing the director to order immediate actions to protect public health, safety, and the environment with an expedited appeal to the commission. And it streamlined and modernized processes for handling confidential information. Next slide, please. The 300 series are permitting rules. The new mission change rulemaking defined the relationship between local and state governments. SB 19-181 and the new rules create a co-equal regulatory authority between the COGCC and local government. Under the new rules, operators must receive a permit from both the local government, should they choose to regulate oil and gas development, and the state. These reviews can happen sequentially, with the local government reviewing the permit first, or concurrently, where the state and local government collaborate on a review process. These processes will be developed between the local government and the commission on an area-by-area basis. The commission is required to ensure that oil and gas permits are only approved if they are protective of public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. The 300 series rulemaking included a consideration of disproportionately impacted communities, and for the first time, a state agency will incorporate environmental justice as a consideration for the siting of a facility into its rules. It addressed cumulative impacts and the commitment to gathering data and partnering with CDPHE on cumulative impacts, including greenhouse gases. It addressed alternative location analysis, which is a new process that allows the commission, operators, and local governments to determine how best to avoid impacts to a wide range of resources. And it also included and addressed comprehensive area plans, which incentivize and encourage landscape level planning as a tool to minimize adverse cumulative impacts. Next slide, please. Well, much of the 400 series was addressed in wellbore integrity rulemaking. The mission change rulemaking did expand rules to protect public water systems that rely on shallow, vulnerable groundwater sources to help protect Colorado's water resources. Oil and gas operators will consult directly with public water system providers for each permit application that could potentially impact a public water supply. And we adopted statewide prohibition on certain chemical additives in hydraulic fracturing fluid that pose unique risks to the public health and the environment if accidentally spilled or released. With notifications, we clarified the timing and recipients of notices about oil and gas operations, including local governments, surface owners, and the general public. And with noise and nuisance, we created nuisance standards around things like noise, odors, dust, lighting, etc., and developed protective regulatory standards during all phases of oil and gas operations. We allowed the director to take action to require the operator to mitigate the issue. We adopted new standards for low-frequency noise and ensured the director and the commission have discretion to apply lower noise standards for both high-frequency and low-frequency noise where necessary. Next slide, please, Hannah. In addition to the changes that were made in the previous administrative law judge rulemaking around the 500 series, the mission change rulemaking expanded public access to the commissioners by allowing any impacted person to request a local public hearing to allow people from across the state to participate in the process before the COGCC and to have direct access to the commissioners. It expanded the definition of standing, which was previously very narrow and differed for each type of hearing, to ensure that all local governments and affected residents have the opportunity to be heard before the commission. Additionally, it expanded public access and information by making pooling brochures available in Spanish, committed to best practices for community engagement, and established a registry for mineral owners. Next slide, please. The 600 series changes expanded protective setbacks and siting requirements for schools and homes to 2,000 feet. The rules did develop certain off-ramps or exceptions from the 2,000-foot setback from buildings, however not schools, when protective measures are in place and the commission approves those exceptions. These exceptions are in Rule 602B and include 4 off-ramps. The first off-ramp is that the well location is already within an approved comprehensive drilling plan or comprehensive area plan. The second off-ramp is that specific equipment that has the greatest noise and emissions, including wells, tanks, separation equipment, or compressors, are located more than 2,000 feet from buildings. The third off-ramp is that the commission finds after a hearing that companies have taken substantially equivalent protections to a 2,000-foot buffer for public health and safety. And the fourth off-ramp is that all property owners or tenants within the 2,000-foot buffer sign a special waiver agreeing to have the well pad built closer than 2,000 feet. The 600 series changes also improve regulatory standards for worker and public safety by requiring operators to develop operation safety management programs, emergency response plans, and adopted the first ever periodic inspection protocols for all oil and gas facilities. Next slide, please. The 800 series changes strengthen protections for groundwater by ensuring that underground disposal of produced fluids is fully protective of usable groundwater in partnership with the US EPA and the Colorado Water Quality Control Division. We adopted Colorado's first ever substantive regulatory requirements to prevent induced seismicity associated with underground injection. And the changes incentivize underground injection of waste fluids as a best practice for management of EMP production waste, and that reduces emissions and other surface impacts of this waste management. Next slide, please. The 900 series changes, we adopted the best in the nation standards to protect public health, mitigate climate change, and prevent the waste of a valuable natural resource by prohibiting routine venting and flaring of natural gas. Exceptions would be when conditions at the well are disrupted, such as during emergencies and with written permission during maintenance, production evaluation at wildcat wells, or as part of an approved gas capture plan. Other times flaring would be permitted include when necessary to complete a well and an operator can show it will minimize adverse impacts to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. This series modification also created a new approach to evaluate the cumulative impacts of oil and gas development through the Commission's innovative CIDR database and other cutting-edge research to address greenhouse gas emissions, protect wildlife habitat, and encourage the recycling and reuse of water. Next slide, please. The changes to the 1200 series include requiring avoidance of Colorado's most critical habitats through specific habitat protections, as well as preparation of an alternative location analysis. It creates a COGCC authority as to when it is appropriate to require compensatory mitigation as directed by SB 19-181. Expands rules to protect aquatic habitats for both iconic native and economically important aquatic species, and implements the executive order around conserving Colorado's big game winter range and migration corridors through minimizing disturbance in big game winter range and migration corridors. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps for the mission change implementation? January 15th, 2021 was the effective date for the rules. As previously mentioned, prior to and since then, there's been extensive outreach, training, and guidance for operators, stakeholders, and staff. There's been revisions to 11 online application forms and the creation of 3 new forms. And the COGCC is now able to receive new permit applications. As of March 1st, operators had to notify the COGCC which of the pending Form 2 well applications and Form 2A well location applications are going to be reapplied for, as all existing applications that were not approved prior to January 15th were required to be resubmitted under the new rules. Next slide, please. So there are 3 additional rulemakings that are required to be undertaken as part of the implementation of SB 19-181. The financial assurance rulemaking must consider increasing financial assurance for inactive wells and for wells transferred to a new owner. It also needs to consider the creation of a per well specific financial assurance fund account to cover all costs of plugging, reclaiming, and remediating a well. And finally, it needs to consider the creation of a pooled fund for orphaned wells where there is no operator or responsible party and there is not enough funds to plug, reclaim, and remediate the location. We have already had a pre-hearing informational docket on this rulemaking that included written submissions as well as oral testimony from stakeholders from around the state as we begin to draft rules and a statement of basis and purpose for this upcoming rulemaking. Additionally, there will be a rulemaking on application fees, which are the contemplation of fees to cover the Commission's reasonably direct and indirect costs in conducting the analysis to assure permitted operations are conducted in compliance with the Act. And finally, a worker certification rulemaking that will look at certifications around OSHA, API compliance officers, hazardous material, welders working on oil and gas process lines, and things of that nature. Next slide, please. So that concludes my update. I can't emphasize enough how much it was a team effort in accomplishing these rulemakings, and I couldn't be more appreciative of the countless hours of testimony and input that were provided by citizens, local governments, industry, and stakeholders from across the state. It truly was an impressive feat, and I think created a product that is both workable and meets the direction we received from SB 19-181. Happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Actually, John, I've got a couple questions. First of all, for, I guess, Series 400 on the noise and the nuisance, that was kind of a big deal. Is that just the noise? What is the noise level? Is that registered by a decimeter at the property line, or how does that take place as far as noise and a nuisance?
It is. It's from and I can send you the specific language in there because it's very specific and I won't remember it exactly off the top of my head. But it is to a property line as measured from a certain point from the well pad location. And it is a decibel measured with decibel meters for both C scale and A scale noise. But there's very specific thresholds, and I'm happy to send you the table. This was a big, long point of discussion through the rulemakings as far as the different levels, different times a day, and how to determine what's protective and still functional for operators.
Okay. And we can probably look that up also. Question number 2 on the 600 series and the setbacks. When it was first proposed, I believe it was 2,500 feet. Is that correct?
No.
1,000 feet, and we went to 2,000 feet?
Actually, it was 1,500 feet was what it was initially suggested by staff, and then it went to 2,000 feet. But it wasn't as cut and dry as that, right? And so staff had proposed a tiered approach that was anywhere from 1,500 or 500 to 1,500 feet, depending on different receptors that were in the particular area. And after reading dozens of reports and studies and hearing from dozens of witnesses, the COGCC commissioners determined that based on some of the information that was provided in a number of those reports, that rather than start down and move up, that it would be more protective to start at 2,000 feet, but have functional and usable off-ramps to go inside of 2,000 feet in the particular situations.
So they have, if you have a site and you draw 2,000 feet away, you basically have almost a mile. You're going to have 4,000 feet from side to side. Is that correct?
Well, you're measuring it from the edge of the well pad, and you're going out 2,000 feet from there. So you got a 2,000 foot radius, but you've got a 4,000 foot more or less diameter. So I'm not sure which way you're.
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying. So,
yeah.
So basically, from one side to the other, you're almost at the 1 mile, which was kind of what they were looking at anyway, right? When this was first proposed, but I guess it doesn't matter as long as we know what the setbacks are. So this is the floor of SB 181. It does give us the authority to be more strict, but we don't have to be. This is just the floor. We have to comply with the floor of Senate Bill 181, correct?
In application, you're correct. In legalese, essentially what a dual regulatory authority is that you as a local government can authorize a permit for an operation that is less protective than the state standards, but the operator still has to get a permit from the state that has to meet the state standards. And so that's what the dual regulatory authority is, but in application, and in layman's terms, it essentially is that the state sets the floor and local governments have the ability to be more protective than the state regulations.
Okay. Commissioner Stevenson,
I don't have anything.
Planning Department, Dawn, Sherry Jane? Nothing? Okay. I guess that's all I have right now, John, unless you want to add anything else.
I will say that Kinder Morgan, who I know works in your area, was incredibly helpful and engaged in the rulemaking process, and so I really appreciate their work and their partnership in helping to develop these rules. And I am more than happy to be a resource for any of you if you've got questions, if you've got complaints, if you just want to learn more about any particular issue. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always available.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, hey, this is Hannah. Who do I return the host back to? Is it Shaq
Yes.
Powers or is it, yeah?
Yes, please.
Zach Powers.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
And John, it's been almost 2 years since I've seen you. I think the last time I saw you, we were having dinner in Washington.
That's right. And then all of a
it's been quite a
sudden,
while.
as soon as we got back, this pandemic hit.
Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah. Well, I'll get down your way as soon as we're allowed to travel. We're planning on coming to visit that part of the state, so hopefully we can catch up.
Great. Are you still in Gunnison or?
No, I had to move to Denver to take this role, and so while I've got a foot still in Gunnison, I'm spending my days in Denver.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to say about that.
I don't know either some days, but
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it very much.
you bet. You have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
take care.
So really, the way I read 181 is whatever they set as the floor, we do not have to be one step over that.
No.
Period, on anything.
No.
And they did get, those setbacks that's another 500 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of a 3,000 foot circumference or diameter, they went to 4.
Yes.
Which, is that really? Yeah.
And basically the county's permitting regulations are basically side by side with theirs too.
With the state, so
Yeah.
it's not gonna really impact us.
It's not going to impact us at all.
And Kinder Morgan, I'm sure they were very well involved with this.
Mhm.
So
They
we
were.
should be,
And I've talked with Kinder Morgan and with Kirby Wynn from Garfield County.
Mhm.
And both of them said that what we are doing in Montezuma County is right on. So,
Okay. Very good. I don't-
So far, Kinder Morgan has everything permitted, so they don't have to
So they don't,
change applications or.
they don't
No.
have any transfers or anything, do they?
no,
So it's, really for us, it shouldn't affect us at all, should it?
no.
And all they have coming up is some reintroduction wells.
They've got some permits that they want, they have some well sites that they want to permit, but it's for next year.
Oh, federal.
Yeah, anything that's federal, we don't deal with. The only time we deal with federal is if part of it is on county.
So the only thing that I can see is the noise and the light nuisance.
Mhm.
But I'm sure they're all gonna be what do they call them, dark skylights or whatever that compliant is.
And it's basically only during construction.
And that's the only time that they can have the open lighting.
That's basically the only time they do have lighting, is when they're doing their drilling.
How is the prohibition on venting and flaring gonna affect Kinder Morgan?
Not much.
I don't think they flare at all, do they?
They don't flare, they vent.
They vent.
But they don't flare.
They want to and need to vent when they first drill because they've got to blow all the water and get everything out, which can and has caused them some issues. They've got one well they could never vent enough to really get an accurate reading on it because they kept running into traces of H2S and the wind was always blowing the wrong direction.
So they couldn't vent it.
They vented it sporadically over about a month or two and finally just said, well, we'll get back to it at another time.
What about we might look that up to make sure we have the actual decibels, because I'm sure we're gonna hear about that. We hear about decibels all the time. And then what it is at that property line, that's probably gonna be,
Kinder Morgan does it from the edge of the well pad where they take their reading.
Yeah,
right from the edge of the well pad, which is gonna be,
A lot
well,
closer.
now it's gonna be a significant distance away from anybody else.
yeah.
But they're planning on using a new process for their pads. They're bringing in some actual pads to spread the footprint versus using feet of gravel.
Yeah.
So if they can reduce those well pads like in half.
And,
Instead of 400 by 400, they might be 200 by 200 or 150 by 150. Because then they got to pull it all back out anyway.
yeah.
Right.
So
And
they
they're,
can
yeah.
do-
They're doing this also to reduce the impacts on the roads, on the county roads.
Oh, sure, yeah, if you reduce it by 50%, that's a pretty good
It's
impact.
a win for
That's
us.
Well, they're
That's
going
a-
from 400 truckloads to, I think they said 150 truckloads. So it
But
reduces,
even federal, they have to visit with Rob.
yeah,
Sure.
because they're
If they're
doing,
drilling
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Good then. So, I don't know, probably, obviously this was one of the first things that Shaq and I got to start working on in 2019, was the SB 181. But
Me too.
the way, I mean, it just sounds like as long as we stay at the floor, we're good. We do not have to be
Yeah.
more, we could be if we wanted to, but we don't have to be,
No.
we just have to live with the floor.
And they also told me that since we are more restrictive than some counties, that we don't have to change what we're doing. We don't have to increase anything, because we're already doing more than what other counties are doing.
Okay. I guess I don't have any other questions unless you guys do, or anything.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I guess we could take a recess.
We'll take
'cause-
a recess until we have our 2 o'clock presentation from Skate.
We are back on YouTube.
Okay, we had our little recess there. We are back. Elizabeth Marsh, we are here and we are ready to hear what SCAPE has for us as far as a letter of recommendation for your endeavor. So with that, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I wanted to share my screen and give you a quick overview of the SCAPE program. So let me get this set up. Okay. 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 So can you all see my slides?
We can.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that a you can?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
ma'am.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Let me, and it looks like my screen's doing something weird, giving you a little, okay. Okay. Okay, is that little notification finally gone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm Elizabeth Marsh with SCAPE, which is the Southwest Colorado Accelerator Program for Entrepreneurs. And we are a 7-year-old program that works to create more businesses that will create more jobs in Southwest Colorado. So we have a 501c3 nonprofit that provides education, mentoring, and technical assistance to growth companies in our area. And we also have an investment fund that every year local angel investors pool their funds to invest in promising local startups that will hopefully provide scalable businesses that will create high-paying jobs that are insulated from a lot of the different tourism, oil and gas, and shutdowns that we see with the pandemic. And so what we do is we take applications once a year and we end up working with about 5 or 6 companies. We bring them into our program for about 6 months and we run through the whole gamut of their business model structure, their entity formation, who their customer is, how they're going to attract that customer, and a lot of work with financial projections to see how much money they need to really get started and grow. Some companies we push more towards small business loans and bootstrapping on their own, and others we help them prepare to connect with angel investors that will provide the capital that they need to get started. And the core of our program is around working with businesses that have a nationwide customer base. We feel the retail, the service, and the tourism businesses are well served by the local SBDC and local chambers of commerces. And so we're looking to work with the growth businesses that will hopefully create those higher paying jobs and provide an investor return for participating along the way. And so a lot of what we're trying to solve is diversifying our local economies and connecting entrepreneurs with the capital that they need to actually get their business off the ground. You know, often there are so many great ideas that people have, but if they don't have access to the money that they need to do their first production run or to test the markets, these ideas never get off the ground. And we also saw, during the pandemic with a lot of the shutdowns, the local service, retail, and restaurant businesses were so negatively impacted that it kind of brought to the forefront how we really need to increase even more employment opportunities that will not be affected by shutdowns. Interestingly, during the last year, none of the SCAPE companies had to do any layoffs or saw any reduction in revenue by the nature of their businesses and how they operated. And so as we're seeing the departure of oil and gas in our communities and the fluctuations of tourism, we're really saying that we need to create more businesses that will provide more jobs so that people can raise their families here. And that's the way that they can afford childcare and health insurance and access to housing, is if we can create more employment opportunities of businesses headquartered in the region, because people want to live here, that have a nationwide customer base. And what's interesting about our area is, it attracts a lot of people for the tourism and the arts and the culture, but they end up wanting to relocate to the area as either second homeowners or young retirees. And that has become my mentor network of people that want to work with the next generation of businesses. And it also is a demographic of people that have the financial ability to be angel investors in local startups. And so our area has a tremendous resource of high caliber mentors that want to give back, local angel investors that want to support businesses. And we also have lots of local success stories that show the entrepreneurial initiatives and drive of the area and how you can launch a business here. We have all the resources and it can be successful. So since SCAPE was formed, we have worked with 36 businesses. They have created over 152 local jobs in Southwest Colorado. And when we crunch the numbers of how much we're spending per employment position created, it's only $7,500 a position, which is a lot less than you'll see in recruitment and state incentives to relocate businesses. Our companies have raised over $25 million. And pretty much all of that money has been spent locally, paying for new jobs, leases on buildings, marketing services, accounting facilities. All sorts of different businesses benefit along the way. And we also serve about 800 different community members through our meetup platforms, Go Code weekends, supporting different type of entrepreneurial initiatives for all different levels of business owners. We've also worked pretty hard to expand the access to capital network, of making sure that we're connecting people with the type of money that they need to get their business off the ground. We've had a lot of local investors participate in our companies. Greater Colorado Venture Fund, Telluride Venture Fund have all been follow-on investors in the companies that we work with at SCAPE. And we've also helped a lot of companies navigate some grant programs through OEDIT at the state level. And so we work with a wide range of businesses. Some of the product companies we've worked with are Agile, which does rocket engine thruster testing, Cold Case Gear, which manufactures an insulative storage pack, and then Esoterra Cider, which is a brand new business in Dolores. They remodeled the old Sun Juice building, and they now have a cidery where people can come and enjoy their cider, but they're also distributing it nationwide. A lot of software companies that we've worked with, and what's really exciting is how many of them are from the Montezuma and Dolores communities. MuniRevs, the founder, is based in Dolores, and she automates sales tax compliance and brings Airbnbs into compliance so that communities can collect the revenue. And then Victim Service Tracking, founded in Mancos, he helps facilitate the reporting through the judicial system. And then the Eli Monster, which is located in Mancos as well, she has sewing patterns that she sells internationally from Mancos. And we've also worked with several companies helping them license nationwide. And so that's one way that local businesses can grow. When they've kind of reached capacity locally, we can help them take their business to different communities. Over the last 7 years, we've had a lot of national exposure brought to Southwest Colorado because of the performance of our companies. And so what excites us about this is that people are seeing that the area has all the resources that a business needs to get launched. We have the entrepreneurial community. We have the resources. We have investors that will participate along the way. So it helps show what is possible in rural Colorado. And so right now, SCAPE is applying for a grant through the EDA. It's called the Capital Challenge. It's a unique grant opportunity because it's actually focused on the administration of investment funds and deploying equity investment into young companies. Usually EDA grants are for infrastructure, program building and development. And this is a rare opportunity that it actually supports our activities of connecting investors with the businesses that need their money and helping to facilitate that deal flow. And so we would be honored if there could be a letter of support from Montezuma County that helps show the EDA that you value our contributions to the area and that you think additional investment activity will help spur economic development. It doesn't obligate Montezuma County for anything. It's just as a government entity showing that you are in support of the proposal. And so if there are any questions about SCAPE or the draft letter that we mocked up, please let me know.
So I do have a couple quick questions. So we
Okay.
had 4 businesses that were basically on this draft letter. The cidery in downtown Dolores, the Esoterra. When did that start, and what kind of jobs are they providing there, or can you answer?
Yes. So that is a company that we worked with about, time goes by so quickly, about 2 years ago. It's kind of an interesting story. They have a background making cider and wines, and they wanted to revitalize the old apple orchards in the area. And so they actually began looking at a facility in Bodo in Durango, but they had a hard time making the numbers work. And so they were so excited how much more business friendly the Dolores community was, and helping them revamp the old Sun Juice building to get it set up to be a tasting room and also to distribute their product. I think they employ 4 or 5 people already. They're looking to continue to grow. They've put a lot of money into the building with all of the different tanks and equipment that's necessary for the apples. They've built a big network of apple suppliers to them. And so we're pretty excited as they're poised to grow and expand nationwide.
Okay. And then also about the one in Mancus, there's a Eli Monster.
Yes, her name is Stephanie, and it's just such a great example of all the neat things that people are doing and how if we connect them with resources, we can help them grow. She has a lot of different sewing patterns that she's made that she sells all over the nation. She's still a little small, just with a few people that work with her and sewing the designs. But these are all examples of, really neat people in neat communities that are doing great things. And if we can help them, then we make our communities stronger.
Okay. And then the other one, the Earn Manufacturing, which is the VSSLS.
Yes, so it's not a typo. They spell it that way so they could get the website. So they actually got some loans through Region 9 to buy some equipment, and they make custom urns that are very beautiful. And so they're also small and getting started, but that's how they all start. If we can help these small ideas, we can turn them into something bigger.
Okay. And then what is the size of the grant that you're looking at?
We haven't finalized our exact budget because these grants are kind of a beast. The grant total that you can apply for is $400,000 over 3 years. It has to be matched 1-to-1. And so as I navigate going through the budget, I'm going to try to aim for at least $350,000 over 3 years, matching that with some support I have coming in from other grants and programs and some of the mentors that volunteer their time for the program.
Okay. Commissioner Stevenson?
No, I have nothing,
Administrator Powers?
nothing from me.
Okay. Well, obviously, we can't make any decisions today. This is just a workshop, Elizabeth, but it is on our agenda for tomorrow, and we will bring it up for discussion then.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate taking the time to listen to a little bit about SCAPE and to consider supporting us in that grant. And feel free to reach out with any additional questions.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. I see a bunch of smiling faces out there. Next on our agenda is our EDT for our planning of our future growth. Come on down. I can see the red button on that one. That one is on.
I did not make one on purpose.
Now it's off.
So,
The red button means it's on.
correct, if it's lit up, it's on.
Okay, that's confusing with the red versus green.
So,
I tell you, too stupid to run microphones 50% of the time in this room.
so Commissioners, our economic development team internally responds to all the project proposals that come down from the Office of Economic Development. We respond to all the project proposals that come over from Region 9, and we collaborate anytime a business is looking to start here or relocate here, and try to help meet the needs of that business or industry, and are also working towards recruiting other industries to relocate into Montezuma County. And so in one of our last meetings, we had discussed some of the hurdles that we're facing, particularly around collaborating with utilities and having ready locations for industries that are potentially wanting to locate in Montezuma County or expand, and even to some degrees to not have to leave the county because they can't find adequate places to expand to. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team, but let's start by talking about the need for a place for businesses and to collaborate with those utilities.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Looks like Rachel.
Okay, sorry. I just want to kind of clarify what we're doing. You know, we get these proposals, or, you know, businesses are looking to locate somewhere, and most of them want to be in Durango, and they want to access that Durango market, or they want to be in Mancos. But we want to be able to show that there's other parts of the county, or, you know, that this county is can attract businesses and help businesses thrive, and that there's a market here as well, or that they can be located here and still access those other markets. So whether it's, you know, we're trying to figure out what would make us most attractive that people would want to locate here versus La Plata County, or, you know, or somewhere else beyond.
And I just want to tag on to one thing she said about Mancos. Mancos is obviously within Montezuma County. However, they have been landlocked by conservation easements to the point that it makes it very difficult for them to expand in any direction.
And then also the limited availability of water. Large-scale operations can't grow to their full potential there like they can in the rest of Montezuma Valley. And so, you know, we really didn't earmark any specific locations, although we do here, and I mean, the intent, I believe, is to steal these businesses as they grow out of La Plata County, can't find space over there, and bring them over to, it's too expensive, bring them over to Montezuma County and have sites that are available, that are ready-made to meet their needs.
Including utility infrastructure.
So are you kind of talking about like an industrial park, or what do you,
Kind
like a
of-
large-scale industrial park?
I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
But more commercial, you know, we've got the heavy industrial areas, but something that's more for kind of that in-between, that like just businesses.
Like a light industrial commercial park.
Okay.
Yeah.
So something like a few acres per lot, or say 2 to 5 acres, depending on the size of the facility of what they may or may not need.
To give the businesses room to grow.
Correct.
Yeah.
So a lot of the thinking was because that might make that leap over to Mancos, okay, maybe there isn't space in the Mancos Valley to draw them just over the hill into Montezuma Valley with better infrastructure would be a goal and idea.
So as far as the infrastructure, what are your hurdles? Is it water? Is it just water? I mean, what,
Well, empires are always the road.
how?
So you're gonna have to pay to get that power to somewhere to supply somebody anytime, every time.
So are
And
we
so if
talking-
we had a block where power was already built out to, it would make it business friendlier?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, because, like, as we get these, like, proposals, you know, we're kind of piecemealing, like, okay, well, this property, you know, has, like, a vacant building, but it might not be exactly what they need, or the land isn't enough, or there's not enough electricity nearby, or they want to be on the sanitation district, but, you know, what we have available isn't in that area. And so just kind of having like a space that has all the roads and the utilities and access to the highway ready to go so that it's more attractive for a whole range of needs. You know, and that's something maybe the county can do, less expensive is like, you know, go through the planning process ourselves, build the infrastructure, work with the utilities. And then we have this like, almost like a Bodo Park that they had in Durango, ready to go.
So the vision that I think, what can the county really do? Well, the county can build roads. We build and maintain roads. And very similar to what happened with 7th Street, is you said, okay, hey, everybody, we're going to build half a mile road here. And then the other groups came on. The fiber came in, the water came in, sanitation district is there, and everybody came together to make a developable area that has a number of different ramifications in need. So it's just that kind of a vision, what happened with Road J into areas for light industrial use.
Yeah, I might mention too that, excuse me, we are looking at this to try to get ahead of the conservation easement curve too, because that's one of the things that we see as a potential roadblock out there. Some of the places that we think, you know, might be pretty good developable ground for light industry, even heavy industry. You know, a lot of those same areas are being looked at by folks that want to put conservation easements on a property, and that can really cause problems for the future land use development as we go forward.
So do you have any plots identified that might be compatible to what you just talked about?
I think the eastern part of the Empire extended to Totten, that whole area, just north of 160, is, because there's a substation out there that's only 30% occupied. So
Which is right by the cemetery, or
right by the
kind of
the
that
sheriff's
general?
posse.
Yeah.
So I mean, that from a standpoint of electricity is available without having to upgrade the whole world of Empire Electric. Water, Montezuma Water's got plenty of water there. Sand District, I don't know what is possible, but if you're looking at a main line, then they would probably look at that main line too, but not just for free.
I think it does go to the south along that. There actually is a roadway there. It's there's a easement for a roadway that goes south all the way to Empire.
Right.
Yeah, in fact,
That, I mean, that's a likely spot, it's close proximity to the city limits. But again, you don't wanna have that whole strip right there become a conservation easement and then you're
Yeah.
locked out.
Yep. So I had asked a question one day, Shaq and I were looking at this. The sheriff's posse, is that owned specifically by the sheriff's posse, or is that owned by the county? That was a question that came up.
So the legal owner is the sheriff's posse.
So then that would not be the county, period. So it's, because is that a 501c3 organization, or what are they?
They are a volunteer nonprofit. I don't know whether they're classified as a C3 or not.
But
So
that's,
we need a coup, is that what you're saying?
that's basically what you're showing us here on the map. Gotcha. Anywhere else?
well, areas of section line roads continue eastward, so that potentially could be a road J continuing eastward.
Mhm.
And I think one reason for that, whether it's a business / light industrial park, is that people really do like the option of being able to live in Mancos, Dolores, or Cortez and getting to all those locations and choosing I think in some ways, the flavor of the town. They're all so distinct in what they offer. And so, 160 Corridor has a lot of potential for those uses.
But with that, you're gonna lose, once you get even J Road, you're gonna lose the sanitation district across 27 Road. Is that a,
It disappears.
yeah,
It
it
doesn't
disappears.
even cover the south.
It doesn't.
Down-
So
Down to 8.
as you're moving to the east on 160 toward the fairgrounds, looking at all of those section lines, you would lose all of the
Yeah.
sanitary sewer at that point in time. So is that a big deterrent, or what do you guys think?
I don't know what the potentials are. We'd have to talk to the sanitation district. I know their actual district boundaries extend all the way out to Cliff Rose Nursery and that storage yard out there. But as far as their system, I don't know what's expandable.
I think it's
the
just a,
sanitation goes up almost to the fairgrounds there, doesn't it, to that, I thought it went out to that rent, or that storage deal right there.
that becomes a county. It doesn't go any farther than the dog or the animal shelter.
Hmm.
I don't think it goes any farther than that, and it hits a line that goes south.
But you could also look at setting up a whole septic system.
Sure,
like
yeah, it could be a-
fairgrounds Where you just do one
Yep.
centralized.
One system for multiple, So I have
The point is, a lot of the proposals we get end up not being feasible because of the land being immediately available and the utility infrastructure not being immediately available. It ends up costing us a lot of businesses that potentially want to come into the area and invest millions, if not tens of millions of dollars.
So let me ask you a question. Go south to the airport, because there's a lot of property that we could partner with the city of Cortez. They own a lot of property down there.
I think they need that for the flight path. If you're looking at across G.
But on both sides, you have it. I think they own everything to the east, east, west, and then to the north. The north would be the flight path. But what about everything like there?
I don't know.
There's a lot of property there that's, I mean, obviously, I don't know what it would be as far as power and or, well, there would be no sanitary sewer there either, but
It's getting closer to fiber.
it is getting closer to fiber, which is something that's, is gonna be a real consideration.
Well, and then there's always that parcel that's in the county that's between 7th and 3rd, or 7th and Main by Walmart.
Yep.
That's, county jurisdiction that could be developable. we just want to talk about the idea of this and what we can do to be more attractive to.
And this will take collaboration between the county, potentially city, and for sure Empire Electric.
Which Empire Electric will be here tomorrow.
At
Hopefully, you know, we'll be able to ask that question. So that piece that's in the county, right, which is basically to the west of the high school, correct? And then there are two lots there.
Are you looking at these down here or this
No,
up
they're
here?
west, directly west of the high school.
Oh, here?
Yeah,
That one's in city and then that one's in county.
yeah, because I remember that one was in the county. It's a really goofy, I have no idea why,
How it
but
happened or what?
I have no idea how that happened. I mean, that's off of 7th Street. It is, there should be power, sewer, everything should be there, water.
One thing that to be considered there is it's been specifically stated that that's not to be a truck route. And if you're moving trucks in and out of there because it's industrial.
I'm not necessarily saying a truck route. I'm talking more like
This part
if you
is,
have
yes.
fiber there, it's more of a route of a highway of information and that type of stuff. So let me move you off of County Road L, which the city was going to a few years back, that 15 acres they have there, they were gonna try and develop that for the same purpose. Do they have any, are they moving ahead with anything there, or is that, I mean, because that's right off of a county road, but I think it's only like 15 acres, it's not very big. Are we looking at something like that to do 1 acre lots, 2 acre lots, or are we looking at 100 acres? I mean, what are we looking
I
at?
think a lot of the businesses that we see want a couple to 10 or more acres.
And for some reason, they all think they need a lot of water. So a septic system's really not gonna ever be adequate.
But I think the purpose of a light industrial business park would be more for not the big, companies that want to create, explosives or things like that. But for example, Mingus has been approached by some companies over the years. Like one was a growing restaurant chain in the Durango area that wanted a tortilla factory. So it would be kind of small manufacturing. And then there was a superfoods company, same thing. And they're currently in Bodo Park, but it was kind of expensive and they'd like to see, what else was out there. And there have been some other inquiries like that. So I think it would be probably on a smaller scale, and they're not, a lot of these businesses aren't necessarily quite big enough to be able to, some of them at least, afford a place to buy, but they want to rent. They want to rent like a warehouse kind of facility that might even have well, I don't know if you've ever been to, what's that brewery, Ska Brewery in Bodo Park, and they brew their beer there, but in the front they have like a tasting room and a restaurant, or, kind of takeout or something. And so I think something like that would be beneficial because, the land costs, the costs in general are less expensive here than in other areas. And, but someone would have to kind of provide like some infrastructure that they could then, rent until they get big enough to purchase their own facility.
And I think somewhere to the east of Cortez is desirable. We've had a couple of scenarios, and one that I'll just give an example of was a couple that were taking these Sprinter vans and remodeling the inside to make them more like campers, and they needed to relocate. We're considering Montezuma County, but all of the places, all of the shops we could find that were adequate were west and north of north or south of Cortez, and they really wanted to be closer to La Plata County because they lived north of Durango. And so if we could have had something more on the east side, I think we might have been able to reel those ones in.
And part of that attraction is also the recreational aspects of the fairgrounds and the bike trails out there, because it would put you closer to those, what is really an amenity.
And that's why we were really looking at the posse, sheriff's posse property as a potential.
And that's true too, and just because it belongs to them doesn't mean they wouldn't be willing to make a trade.
And we've been, for the past year since we've been getting these proposals, we've been brainstorming about sites throughout the county. Some unutilized or underutilized, oil and gas supply facilities that are out there. There is some availability of that. It's a little bit piecemeal, but the approach of, we have plenty of land, come on over and we'll talk about what you want to do, doesn't always work. Sometimes we have to say, here's what we have to offer as far as ready-made site, and to be a little more attractive.
Well, and like, as we talk about like specific locations, it's more for, not that we're just gonna go and like knock on someone's door and say like, give us, give the county your land, or we wanna buy your land. It's like, as big swaths of land maybe come up for sale, we wanna like, have already been thinking about this and be like, hey, would that be ideal for, our ideas? And so then the county can be a little more proactive on like economic development.
I'm almost thinking that, I'm getting a lot of thoughts here. One comes to mind is Mancos. Obviously, Rachel, you're here representing Mancos today right now. And just, this came out as an odd question, but when John and I met with Mancos over the airport, the gravel facility, they asked, well, what do you have? Would you be willing to trade anything? I'm like, we don't own anything in Mancos, except for we do. We actually own a pretty good lot where our road and bridge facility is at in Mancos. As far as how big that is in acres, I don't know how big it is, maybe 1 acre, 2 acres, I don't know how big it is, but it sits right in the middle. I'm gonna call it a residential neighborhood. Would that be something developable, and we move ourselves up on the hill where there's really not much? Because it's all around a conservation easement in Mancos.
Yeah. Do you know, where is it? I really can't say, but
No,
it is.
I know that,
yeah.
I'm just saying, that was posed to us at the time. I'm like, we don't own anything in Mancos, and now that I sit here and think about it, after this conversation, we do own a fair piece of ground right there in the middle, basically, of Mancos.
And it's in the town limits, even?
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
right in the town, it's right off
Right in
of,
the middle.
On Grand?
It should be labeled there somewhere.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the little like Coliseum looking. I don't know what you call
Coliseum in
Vegas?
Or the like what the columns.
no, I think you were just across the street, Shaq.
Zoom in. See that little, Coliseum looking thing just below whatever street that is.
You zoomed out, you need to zoom in.
Zoom in,
Now go up.
and down, go up.
Keep going north.
Down. There it is, right at the top of the screen.
Right on, it's like Willow?
Yeah, it's a big
Montezuma County
lot right there
shop,
of
about a
parking.
quarter of a block.
See where the little Capitol-looking blue building, there you
There
go.
you go.
Oh, is it next to the, right behind the Bauer House?
So-
Or is
It's next to the conservation district
it- Oh,
on the
okay.
Bauer, off of Bauer Avenue, next
Yeah.
to Silviano Garcia's.
So
Which-
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
it's
think,
something that you can talk to their trustees. I mean, you guys are bringing this to us, I'm just looking at each city and what do we have?
Yeah.
First of all, obviously, the city of Cortez, this facility out here, off
This
of
is a
L Road.
half an acre. I don't know that that's enough to.
You could put a strip mall on a half an acre to provide a lot of small businesses of what she is
Sure,
talking
yeah,
about.
the tortilla manufacturer,
You wouldn't
yes,
get-
could go there, but the camper people, no.
No,
So-
you're not gonna get that, but.
And we would like, to get a lot of businesses there,
Correct.
so.
So a larger facility, you're gonna have, large acreage. You're gonna have 20, 30, 50, 100 acres, depending on, the needs of what they need.
And the capacity to grow and stay in the community, because there were a couple from that lady's presentation on the skate. Believe a couple of those businesses are already growing where they're already thinking about moving out of the area and out of the state. That's how quickly they grow, because we don't have either place or workforce built up yet. So we need to expand that ability for businesses to stay as they grow.
That's two totally different problems, though. Workforce and compared
Yeah.
to structure, I mean.
It is, but one may sort of beget another as you develop small businesses and the medium-sized businesses, and then the workforce expands.
How many inquiries have you guys had through this pandemic? So over the last year, how many inquiries have you had that we couldn't, or we could have possibly filled if we would have had the entire infrastructure?
We've
there?
probably had 12 to 15 inquiries, ones that we maybe could have done are closer to 6.
And was it because of size of property or?
Availability of
specifically
utilities in a lot of them.
Infrastructure.
The infrastructure?
And I say, we were talking about, well, everybody's been talking about the old M&M site for a while, and we're talking about the potential of that site of basically being a new gas station truck stop, and then shortly thereafter it came in. We didn't really have a hand in recruiting them. They kind of recruited themselves, but what it kind of showed was that site was perfect and ready-made for that use, and they came and occupied that. So having more of those ready-made sites is what's going to have maybe push it over and say, you know what, this is going to work for my space. This is going to work for my need. And I think an industrial park by nature is built to accommodate a lot of different needs. There's assurance.
I guess I would put the same question, pose it back to the city of Cortez, the town of Mancos, the town of Dolores. What do they have? That's going to be the easiest, in my opinion, to work with government to government, because we all have things to trade, swap, that's going to benefit everybody within the county. And I'm not opposed to looking at something larger, but then that's going to become a larger capital outlay as far as, which I understand that we'll get it back once we sell the property.
What about like out there where Rock Springs Church is at, right in that area? They're getting ready to move back to Cortez. There, Montezuma Water's right there.
Right by the school.
One thing, if I might mention, is, for example, and I don't know, it's coming up in like 2 weeks, there's a DOLA
It's
Ready
actually
grant.
65 acres.
It's an economic development grant and their average amount is around $50,000. But it could potentially be used for the purchase of land or developing like plans for a light industrial park. But if we had something like this in mind and ready to go, then a grant writer could look for, like if you have the plans and then you wait for, oh, there's this grant coming up and we have plans, and then, so I guess what I'm wondering is if I don't know if I could get it together in time to apply for this particular grant, but in general, if we had some plans ready to go.
Well, and Rock Springs already got the turning lanes, everything off the highway, so that's another.
It's 65 acres, man. That's a big
Yeah.
portion.
I didn't know they had that many
Yeah, I didn't know they had that
I didn't
many.
either.
35 acres?
65.
65
acres.
Gosh, that's,
And that's all pretty level back out in there too. It wouldn't be a lot of dirt moving and stuff.
there's not, there's just
Yeah.
a little draw, there's not really a
By
canyon
Rock
there.
Springs, by that church.
No.
Looks pretty,
Church symbol is there.
pretty
Oh.
minor, really.
And it's for
It's
sale.
pretty level out there.
The church is
Yeah.
I
There's
think,
just a little
I think
bit
what
of
Rachel
timber.
just mentioned, I think there's a value there for sure. And that's actually a good idea. It's already got two structures there, right? I mean, I don't know what they could or couldn't hold. Obviously Montezuma Water, power. There again, that could be
And who knows whether they want to sell it or not, but they are moving back into town, so.
I saw that.
If anybody knows Pastor Dave, they could pick his brain.
I mean, it's all open for conversation, not,
Yeah.
I mean,
Nobody
we
can put
have
an offer on the table.
sanitation out there, but we could still design something that would accommodate.
Well, some of those high water demand businesses, it's not gonna work unless you have sanitary.
Yeah, correct. That's, yeah, then you're gonna have to move within the municipality.
High water demand almost would have to be out by Dolores, but it's not a bad idea to have these talks with each municipality, and in addition to having one in the county. I mean, obviously Cortez kind of semi has one up in the industrial park, but I don't know what the thoughts have been from Mancos and Dolores. And I'd be happy to go and speak with them.
Well, I think between Joel and just, like I said, the conversation that I'm thinking of was, you know, what do you guys have this swap or trade for? And I'm like, well, we don't have anything. And I'm like, well, we actually kind of do. I don't know if they'd be open for that, but,
I think it definitely highlights the need for kind of each community to work together and have these conversations together. Because as we get these proposals, you know, or opportunities come up, if we're kind of all working together, you know, just because it won't be located in Mancos doesn't mean Rachel can't help, you know, facilitate those conversations and figure out, okay, where is it best going to be placed? Because, you know, in this community, we're all together. You may live in Mancos, but you shop in Cortez and you recreate in Dolores.
Well, and
Yeah.
hypothetically, if one of Mancos's bigger businesses were considering leaving, that jeopardizes a lot of jobs in Mancos, whereas if they were considering relocating to Cortez, it doesn't jeopardize the jobs.
And we've been working a lot with Region 9, having a lot of talks, and there's discussions and presentations, working with Laura. But I'm not sure of any of the other towns that are working actively with economic development recruitment at this time the same way that we are specifically.
have we secured anything that we've had presented to us within the last 12 months? Because we couldn't, either one, provide.
And it takes some time. I mean, it really does. It takes time to really implement. I mean, you know, just having these conversations is helpful, I think.
I mean,
The stuff from Region 9, we don't even hear back sometimes. I mean, it's.
You mean the stuff from OEDIT,
Oh,
which gets forwarded through Region 9, yeah. I mean, of the ones that were specifically looking, no, we weren't able to secure any of them. And oftentimes, that's why we're having this conversation. We haven't been able to secure them, and it's been because of available, ready to move in space with utilities.
Well, you know, I would just say everything related to this is playing the long game, you know, sometimes
Sure.
5, 10 years. You look at what happened with this esoteric cider was, in part, started with the vision of what, you know, Jude Schoenemeyer did with the orchard restoration program, got the excitement going, made that happen, and then an opportunity presented itself to turn into a real business. Same thing with the dwarf and the wood products, and they had a site. They had a perfect site at that juncture, obviously the old plywood plant to move into. That was very fortunate for that to come together, but those were still very long game activities. And so I guess that's really what the proposal is to say, what is the need out there for the long game of economic development for these, for unseen businesses to be able to move into our county and stay.
I think another part of it too is just like maybe having that reputation, because sometimes it feels like Montezuma County is an afterthought for OEDIT or Region 9, because we'll get these proposals and it's like they're due in 3 days. And it's like, oh, okay, well, La Plata County couldn't find anywhere that met the specs, so let's try Montezuma. You know, and it'd be nice if we were, you know, people were looking for us specifically instead of as like, okay, I'll settle for Montezuma County and because I can't locate somewhere else. You
And
know?
as we go after specific industries, because there are some that we'd like to intentionally recruit here, we'd like to be able to say, oh, by the way, this is where you could build your business here.
Even by having these discussions, I think it gets out that we are business friendly, we're welcoming, we're ready to work with you. Give us a call. And that wasn't the case, I don't believe, a couple years ago here. So that itself can have some benefits.
So would it be worthwhile to reach out to the municipalities first to see what they have within their municipalities that would be easy to do our own planning, or our own PUD, or whatever you guys are thinking per size of businesses? I mean, I'm not sure, just thinking of Dolores, if there's a lot there, but there could be something that we don't know about. Obviously Mancus and then Cortez.
Obviously won't hurt to ask.
First the conversation.
Yeah, first the conversation, and then I mean, we can identify a few things right here, and then we just identified the possibility of maybe the church. Or, I guess it's no longer a church, but, there would be enough property there to definitely grow into. Okay. And that is close to a lot of things, right there.
And not on top of a snowball.
And you're at the tail end of Montezuma Water right there and stuff, and
But it's still
because
there.
that's where their water's gonna have to come off of this site, because Mancus has, they have no water left, period. They're maxed out.
And then if we have the paths to Mesa Verde,
Which is kind of a, Mancus is kind of just with no water, no ground. I mean, they're kind of they're in a tough situation.
Do you, let's see, I guess I'm just curious, because it was my understanding that there actually was plenty of water for the town. It's just that their ability to process it wasn't adequate.
I think that
I don't know
was-
about the town, but the rural water deal over there, you couldn't touch one of those taps at all. The rural community, you can't get any water there at all.
Oh,
I don't
They're
know.
not
ma-
selling any more taps, I don't think,
No,
are they, Joe?
no.
Right, but that would be for kind of agricultural purposes,
No,
right?
that's
No,
drinking
that's
water.
for.
Oh, that's for
Montezuma,
Yeah.
or
domestic,
Mancus Valley.
right.
They put a moratorium on selling any
District.
taps.
So Mancus Water can get water from Montezuma Water, but
Correct.
it's not gonna be cheap.
No.
And I think that's,
Montezuma will supply them, they're not gonna let people just
and that's what they
die.
did in the Cedar Mesa subdivision back there. They hooked the two systems
will pay
together
for
back
it.
there.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
No.
So it's probably not, it's
But that's
probably
as far
better to
as
look
that line goes. It doesn't
kind
go-
of towards,
And I don't know how they get
Cortez.
past there, but
But I think Mancus Rural Water supplies the state rest area.
they do. If they go to there, if they bypass
Yeah,
each
they-
other right there.
Just because of the size of the line.
They also, they also service the college up there.
so could you guys reach out? I mean, we identified a few properties, one where Rock Springs was at, one the sheriff's posse, which they still just have a couple structures and a rodeo grounds out there, right?
They don't even have the rodeo ground. It's all been taken out.
Oh,
All that's there is a couple little sheds
Well, they took
in the
all
bleachers.
Arena down.
The arena's down. The bleacher, there's some bleachers there, but everything else is
Fixing
gone.
to fall
There's just
down
a
on their
couple
own
little
property.
buildings out there now.
Been a long time since I've been out there.
Well, they might be interested in playing Let's Make a Deal.
I don't even know who would be, the sheriff's posse would be right now.
Probably
Wanda
Wanda
Martin.
Martin.
Wanda
We could,
would
yeah,
be
I'm sure
part
we
of
could
it.
find out real quick. And then obviously the city of Cortez with their facility, if they would be willing to work with the county. And I think we've identified a few things, it's just a matter of what we want to do with it. And have the conversation of who's open to do anything with it.
Right.
And I guess this is a preliminary way of saying, in future budget years, we'd appreciate it if you were open to it. This is the preliminary discussion for that, but I don't want to beat around the bush too much.
No, and I do also think there's grant funding out there for things, for economic development type things that are
Which-
going to leverage jobs.
Which then, you're gonna have to change hats again now.
Yes.
So I need you to actually start looking at that and bringing that forth so that we can actually see and be prepared
Okay.
if it's something that we can or cannot do. Because every business that we bring in here, if it's 10 jobs or 5 jobs or whatever, that's 5 or 10
Yeah.
families, which is, could be 2 to 4 people per family. So it becomes a pretty big,
Ecosystem.
add to
Yeah.
the system.
And potentially, it's not just about business attraction and recruitment, which is a large piece of it, but there's a real and present danger of losing businesses that don't have the current ability to expand.
Okay. Who's gonna have the conversations with these people, and then when are we gonna talk again?
I think we can get on each of their agendas in the coming weeks and meet back up here.
Okay. So 6 weeks, we'll have the same conversation? After we've had conversations with the municipality?
And it will be,
On their agendas that quick.
But by then too, the recovery funds will hopefully be
Mhm.
distributed, and we'll be having conversations about how to spend that and what qualifies.
Okay. Well, whatever it takes time, I'm just,
Right.
everybody meets every 2 weeks.
When
We're,
they're not meeting, I don't know what the schedules are.
the only one not meeting now is Dolores, as far as I
Correct.
know.
I
So-
think Makes and Cortez, they
That's a
didn't.
third.
Yeah, that's 33%. You're correct. And it will be vitally important to keep the utilities in the loop on those, which we can start with tomorrow.
It'd be really interesting to see what the sanitation district has to say, because for a medium or larger size industrial park area, you're going to need to be on sanitation district. And so that would.
And that's just a phone call. The capacity, which it's been a few days since I've been away from there, but they still had plenty of capacity in the
Plant's
plant.
got capacity, it's
Yeah.
not for crazy amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it can't,
And not industrial crap.
correct. But your standard every day, they've got a lot of capacity.
Yeah. getting the infrastructure out to, as far as Rock Springs, that's another story.
Well, that's gonna have to be
That's
something
almost free.
on
Almost
site.
free, yeah, yeah.
Depends on who the almost guy is, how much money he has.
Well, it'd be interesting to have a talk with CDOT. My impression is that the ability to have long sight distances and AD lanes on 160 East is probably more than 145 or Broadway or any other place, any other one of the highways around within a couple miles of town.
Well, with
One-
Rock
Rock
Springs,
Springs
they
is
should
set
already
up
have
for it.
one, yeah.
They've got the lanes
Yeah.
Yeah.
painted.
It
Yeah,
was
they-
just a
they pay for
painted
it.
turning lane, it wasn't a ACAD, or
ACDC.
Rock
ACDC
Springs
lane.
paid for the turning lanes there, yeah.
Because that was just a restriping issue. We're gonna do the same thing out on County Road N and County Road P, and that'll be done this summer also by CDOT for us.
Which highway, 491 or?
491.
491.
Wow,
Yep,
okay.
because the truck traffic is already, by the time they reach N Road, they're already going the speed limit,
Mhm.
65 miles an
Oh,
hour.
yeah, I turned on P yesterday, and you have to stop traffic
I go
to take
there
that turn.
twice a day.
So-
On that road, twice a
It's
day.
gonna be a big deal to get that turning lane to the west on
Mhm.
P and N Road, which CDOT is doing that. I have confirmation for that, which is a big deal. So
That would be very nice to have
it's happening. She said by the end of, well, they've gotta get all
In the
that.
summer? That's a long drive.
Not really.
it. Not really, on the CDOT's world.
In the summer, 6 months.
It's taken a 2-year conversation to get it to this part.
Is this with Joe?
Huh?
Is this with Joe Heinrich?
No, it would now be the new Region 5 Director, Julie Constant.
Oh, the new person.
Yeah, she's the new head person after Mike Mulbaugh retired. Okay, anything else?
Not
Team?
from me.
Donuts in the morning? You guys are bringing them?
Cinnamon
Joel's
roll?
turn.
Something
Am I
new?
gonna eat donuts in the morning? Yeah, I guess. More likely.
I thought
If
Joe and I
we're
were gonna
here.
go pack up for a 7 or 8 mile ride, but I don't know how well his horse is in shape.
Shaq getting ready to unicycle tomorrow?
Okay, guys, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you want us to, do you want to talk about the,
We're still on
fair
YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that is the, completes our agenda for the day. Anything else?
Not from me.
Anybody else? Okay, we're adjourned for the day. Thank you all.